Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers, for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Episode 15, a deeper look into ECollar dog training.
Any other good practices you guys want to talk about?
Yes, so let's talk a little bit about proper foundational work with ECollar. That's something that's probably one that I see
It's
wrong.
muy importante.
Yeah, it's muy caliente. It's probably one that I see wrong the most. People buy the e-collar and don't do any sort of training with it. So the dog is just expected to automatically know things. And again, the e-collar pressure is not directional. So the dog's just getting corrected on top of whatever the other stimulus is. So definitely, I want to dive into proper foundational work a little bit.
Yep. You pick.
Yep.
Who wants to go?
Let's start with you, Brent.
Alrighty. Proper foundational work. Pretty much, if your dog, never put an e-collar on a dog with a blank slate who doesn't know anything, right? Pretty much what this is like if you have a very ignorant, impulsive, all over the place dog. Always one of our first goals is to try and gain focus over dogs. Now, don't get me wrong, e-collars can be used in the efforts of getting focus on a dog. However, if we can shape, right, we always got to follow that LEMA, least intrusive, minimally aversive. If we can shape using positive reinforcement methods, let's do it. Why not? Right? If we can get the dog to like doing something, that's way better than forcing the dog to doing something. And there's not really any arguing in that. But when we start getting into more advanced behaviors like prey drive or controlling instinct, there's sometimes it's not about whether the dog likes it or not. But so proper foundational would be practice. Make sure your dog knows your sit, they're down, they're stay. Make sure that we have a luring system, right? Whether that luring system is with food, that luring system could be with leash pressure. The luring system has to be developed because dogs don't know directional pressure. So whatever lure it is that we're using has to provide some type of directional pressure in that dog. And as much as we can develop the dog's desire to want to listen to us, that will definitely help us for more long-term, especially off-leash work, but definitely when we start introducing e-collar pressure, if we can get the dog to like doing stuff up front, then it's going to make the transition onto e-collar a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. A couple points on that. So we talked, I think 1 or 2 episodes ago about there's just such a broad spectrum of dog training in terms of the different methods and the different tools and skill sets that people have as they kind of go through their dog training life cycle. And I think that you actually can completely e-collar train a dog from beginning to end. And it's not something that I do very often. I mean, I do definitely, if we're talking phases in training and we're talking the typical stuff like food work, leash pressure, e-collar pressure, if it kind of went in that order, like typically speaking, right? We can agree that that's most likely the case.
Right.
There are situations like, I work with a rescue. I have feral dogs in here quite a bit. They trap them, get them all vaccinated and fixed and all that, then send them to me. The dog is not interested in my food. The dog is not interested in anything, leash, crate, anything.
Right.
So I have actually trained quite a few dogs, like beginning to end, leash pressure. And then I finally get to the point to where I built enough trust with them, strictly with e-collar, that they will now accept food. And then I can go back and do phase 1 stuff on the back end of everything.
Right.
But I'll put this caveat on it. I do agree that food work does get that extra bit of pep out of the dog. And ultimately, as trainers, I want to do yes, I totally agree with Lima. I also, we're kind of working on a few different levels here. There's like Lima for the dog, 100%, whenever possible. But also what's most effective and realistic for the client. What's also, what's like, there are a few things.
It's context. Yeah.
Right. So as far as an e-collar trainer, I would say definitely use food alongside your e-collar, but just me and you talked about how good within a particular skill set are you, because that will affect the trajectory of the dog. And so I think an e-collar trainer that's good enough can e-collar train a dog from beginning to end. It doesn't necessarily mean you should, but if you have that skill set, then I think you're on the right track.
Right.
Maybe counter something you said, Brent, about like not just putting an e-collar on and starting training.
Do it.
When you say that, you're talking about like training new things, like new skills.
Right.
Like how do you feel about dog is displaying, a dangerous behavior?
So that would be
jumping.
that's not so much teaching.
How do you feel about putting it on and doing it?
So that's fine with me. That's not necessarily teaching a new behavior. It's blocking old behavior.
Right.
Right. So if you're blocking an old behavior like lunging, biting, like anything that obviously that is unacceptable. What I'm saying is there are some people, that might throw an e-collar on a dog without any idea of down, right? So in a perfect world, we would have shaped the down already, maybe with leash or food, and then we'd be able to teach the dog down, right? So shaping, and we talked about this in our positive reinforcement episode where we talked about, they've proven that positive reinforcement is the best way to shape new behaviors,
Right.
but that's not, but that's not to say that negative reinforcement or positive punishment can't be used to block behaviors, right? So definitely blocking behaviors, controlling bad behaviors, controlling impulse, those things are what it's used. But blocking a behavior is not the same as shaping a brand new behavior.
Well, you know what, too? I want to be clear for again, for the younger dog trainers or people who might be struggling with their dogs who might be listening to this. Shaping new behaviors are like, 3 malleable terms. So when we talk about shaping a new behavior, in the context that I know that you mean, yes, food work definitely has a certain special aspect to it that e-collars don't. But when we talk about behaviors are not just singular. Sometimes a dog's overall behavior is the issue. So it's like a dog can know how to sit. I've met a ton of dogs that have come to us. I tell people all the time, a good portion of my client base, just doing what I do, have already been trained, but they just still need work. And
they're assholes. Yeah.
Right. And so I've seen dogs that are like with food work, they're on point. I think of like new cuz, or I think of other dogs that they do well with it, but it just isn't quite the complete picture. And so I do think that when we talk about shaping behaviors, part of shaping behaviors as a definition is limiting those other behaviors, because then, I kind of think of it as like the dog's cup is full. If he's going nuts over a squirrel, and you can tell him all the behaviors you want, and he can know them too, but he's just not in a place to hear you right now. So you kind of bringing him back to neutral and giving yourself space to where you can now give him input and he's willing to accept it. He's like in a place now where he can do that. That to me is shaping behaviors. And and I kind of see it as like a gas pedal and a brake pedal. You slow him down with this and speed him up with that, and to me it's all part of one kind of whole of shaping a dog's behavior overall.
I get that. I get the terminology. I totally get that. Yeah, I'm not going to argue. I think I get the perspective when I'm talking about more unnatural behaviors. The sits, the downs, the like a finish, things like that. Like things that may be a little bit more complex.
Oh yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I don't expect an argument. I'm more just giving the other side of the,
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.